The Bristol Board of Education, maintaining a safe and secure learning environment for all students.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is July 11th, and it's one of the 3 months where we meet not on the first Wednesday of the month, but the second Wednesday of the month, July, August, and September. So we welcome you to the meeting this evening. And
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item on the agenda is a remembrance from a former educator who passed away, Linda Goodwill Kogut, who was a teacher in the district from September 27th of 65 to June 20th of 68. Thank you. Our first item is staff and student recognition.
It's my pleasure to introduce Hattie Dallas, who was an 8th grader at Northeast Middle School, and I'm guessing you're going to a different school next year.
Yes, I'm going to Eastern.
She's going to read an essay that she read at the state capitol and won an award for.
Do you think that all children are given an equal shot at succeeding? Many people have different opinions on this topic. Some say that schools should be equal, but people don't understand what the difference between equality and equity is. Equity refers to the quality of being fair and impartial, while equality means the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. So, if you were to quickly look at this, you might think that they have the same meaning. Schools take several things into consideration to have educational equity, but sometimes schools don't always succeed. Many times it's difficult for schools to maintain equity throughout the school due to lack of resources, but we need to change that. All kids should have an opportunity to succeed, even if they come from less. Educational equity is a very important factor in having a well-run school system. All students, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, etc., should be given a chance for success. Usually in schools, this is the case. Students who may not have the money to afford certain books or a computer are given materials by the school so that they can complete assignments or obtain good grades just like other kids who have the privilege of having a computer or books at home. When school administrators look into their school educational equity, they take these two things into consideration: fairness and inclusion. They try to make sure that schools can be as fair as possible, not leaving anyone behind who may deserve to succeed. But in some cases, educational inequity might take place. Educational inequity is something that schools have to be careful about. This happens all the time where school systems can't be as fair as they would like because some students may come from families with low income. A lot of the time, this kind of situation happens when young adults are looking into colleges. When students come from a family that doesn't make that much money, almost 100% of the time, an elite school is completely off the table. Even if the students meet the requirements and would surely get in with their academic record and their extracurricular activities, there's just not enough money to pay for such a good school. Less than 30% of the people who come from low-income families even apply for schools like this. And even if they were accepted and could keep up with the money situation, less than half of them graduate. This is a hard topic to understand. A lot of people think that students, even coming from low-income families, should be able to go to schools like this for less money, while others feel the price is right because students are paying for a good education. I believe that schools should always be fair with their students. I know how some students might feel because I don't come from the richest family in the world. I know how it feels sometimes when you can't write an essay at home because you don't have a computer to use. So from personal experience, I believe that school systems need to make sure that schools are fair and no one is behind or put to a lower class because of their money deficiency. All children should be able to have a bright future, no matter, and not have to worry if they're going to go to a good school or not because of their race or how much money they have. All kids deserve to have a successful life and be the best that they can be.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that essay. Appreciate you coming and sharing with the board. next item are the minutes from our regular meeting on June 6th, 2018. Any motion for approval?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Any additions, corrections, or amendments? If not, I believe you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. And now move to committee reports. Our first committee report would be operations.
The Operations Committee considered two items at our meeting in June. The first was the feasibility study we had conducted. That'll be appearing on the agenda later on in the program under deliberated items. The second was a request to name a field or something at a school after a former educator coach. We're going to take that matter under consideration, referring it to the policy committee because the board currently does not have a policy about naming rights. So we'll be taking that up next month.
Any questions? If not, we'll hear from finance, and I believe Commissioner Giantonio was going to pitch it today from a couple of us that were not able to be here.
The Board of Ed Finance Subcommittee met on June 25th. Ms. Brown discussed the budget status update for the end of the year. She also updated the committee on the status of the 2016-17 ED 001 internal investigation, and Commissioner Caggiano discussed an FOI request. So for the Finance Committee update details, I'm going to defer to Ms. Brown.
Thank you very much. Good evening, all. Just a little budget information that we discussed back on the 25th. We are right on track to finish where we forecast at negative 1.28 million. That's a deficit that we've been running mostly due to special education services. And that is without the monies from the state of Connecticut for relief for displaced students. So we'll even be a little bit below that. And we've been coordinating with the folks at the city almost daily from here on in so that they know where we're going to land. The Finance Committee did approve a large transfer amount of $105,568. That's from a para-sub line to a general substitute line for payments to Kelly Services to finish the year. We also reviewed some end-of-the-year procedures. There will be several journal entries to zero out the lines throughout the budget. These are not transfer items. These are journal entries just to offset all the amounts in each line. We'll keep a record of all of those so that we can see where our actual expenditures were to help us more accurately budget for 1920, which we'll begin working on in about a month or so, if you could believe that. I also updated the committee on the internal investigation that we've been doing for the 2016-17 ED 001. We did go through every outplaced student, every purchase order, every invoice, and every check that was cut in the 16-17 school year. And we did identify 6 individual students that had not been reported to the state at all. And they, that along with some other smaller errors in tuition and transportation, summed to $467,333 that was not reported to the state. We have since contacted consultant Kevin Chambers at the State Department of Education, who has explained to us that while adjustments can be made to students that were reported, we cannot add more students to the report. Of course, we're not satisfied with that answer, so we will keep on pushing, and we will contact our state legislator representative to help us get some special legislation to recoup some of these monies. Meanwhile, we have drafted a letter to Time Management Solutions that did file the ED 001 report. We did this at the city's request, of course, and we sent it for opinion. And we have since heard back from them and will go out. Would you like to speak about that?
I received the letter back from counsel at Shipman and Goodwin, and it will go out in tomorrow's mail.
And then lastly, Commissioner Caggiano had brought up some information about an FOI request that Dr. Moreau had received. We discussed that briefly and offered some clarification to some points that you made. Dr. Moreau talked about she had gone back and forth via email where she had discovered that there were lines in the EDO 01 before it was turned over to the state and submitted to the state where monies were missing for employee benefits. And that was corrected by Andy Paquette before it was turned in. And then you had mentioned a letter dated January 29th, and I had tried to offer some clarification there. That letter was from the state to all school systems, sort of a form letter, talking about adjustments to the cost share grant. Then there was a link for all systems to get into, and it was that date where we appeared to have a $114,209 positive amount, which was since turned into a $501,000 negative amount. And I don't know if you had anything further on that, Commissioner Kajian.
Maybe just to clarify, because, and again, I don't think we record that meeting, but I don't believe that I had questions about January 29th. That's clear from January 29th on. What I had referred to that evening was on May 17th, we had correspondence from Dr. Moreau and others saying that both you and her were not in place and not involved. I think that's what led to the FOI, which did ask for any documentation, emails, or any correspondence from August 1st through September 15th. So I just want to be clear about that. That's all the FOI covered. It didn't cover any other time periods.
So if that was my mistake, certainly my apologies. I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about two different things and we had clarity.
I'm
So
clear.
that's all I have for tonight, unless you have further questions. All right, thank you.
We'll now move on to personnel. Commissioner O'Brien, do we have a report?
No report.
Okay, Commissioner Dewey, student achievement?
The Student Achievement Committee met twice since our last Board of Ed meeting. The first meeting was on June 13th, where Alan Burial gave a presentation on the Gifted and Talented program. We also met on Monday, July 9th, with a joint committee between Student Achievement and Policy to discuss the bullying policy and the school climate policy, both of which will be discussed further down the agenda in the policy revision.
Okay, and finally, Commissioner Taylor for policy.
So we did meet twice on policy, as Commissioner Dubey has just stated. The first policy meeting, we talked about many different policies that we'll be voting on later, and then we decided that the school climate and the bullying policy needed some more time. We also wanted to invite some of the administrators and BFT to be there for the meeting, which is why we combined our student achievement and policy meetings this Monday and had a great conversation. And again, those policies will be talked about later on the agenda.
Okay, and now we will go to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Yesterday and today, we spent with all of our VAPS members, or those who were available, I should say a couple were on vacation, and we dealt with a variety of topics. I think we left them with heads spinning because of the amount of content that we provided to them. We talked about the continuous improvement cycle, which was led by Carly Fortin and her Office of Teaching and Learning Supervisors. We talked about social and emotional health and its impact on students. They began working on high-quality emergency protocols and a uniform set of emergency procedures across the district, with exception to rooms in the building and exits and so on. We're going to be publishing a flip book. The majority of it is all the same. The schools will have 10 pages that they can insert with names of people, who's in charge of what, so that every classroom, whether or not the regular teacher is in there, will be able to deal with an emergency situation in the proper way. We also shared the district priorities for the year, which are tied to the board goals: inspiring and cultivating talent, organizational and operational effectiveness, community engagement and partnerships, and a focus on our learners. And that is the end of my report. It's a very full couple of days that we spent, and I know that when we meet again August 20th with our full council, we'll continue to build upon the work that we did today. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is items 6.1 through 6.2. Does anybody wish to pull any of the items from the consent agenda out for further discussion? Does anybody wish to pull anything out? If not, I believe you're ready to vote on the consent agenda, so you're voting on items 6.1 through 6.2 in its entirety. So I have a motion.
Should we have a motion? Yeah, I motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We now come to public comment section of our agenda. This is a time when the public can speak on any item, either on the agenda or not on the agenda. I believe we have some candidates. First person is Leah McCabe.
My name is Leah McCabe. I live at 349 Ivy Drive, but I'm also the Social Studies Department Chair and Assistant Drama Director at Bristol Central. I spoke last month at the Operations Committee meeting and highlighted the concerns of the Bristol Central Performing Arts Department regarding the opening of a new intra-district arts magnet school. I submitted 3 pages worth of questions about this proposal, and I hope that some of you have had a chance to look them over. I understand that Bristol currently has about 300 students attending various magnet schools throughout the state, though not all are attending arts magnet schools. I understand that there is a draw for some students to have a more specialized educational experience. Additionally, I applaud this board for its commitment to arts education. Your interest in theater and technical production, as evidenced by this proposal, is incredibly refreshing. But it is unrealistic to think that creating a specialty school will not detract from current arts programs in the district who are in desperate need for funding, facility improvement, and staffing. Now, the argument may be that by creating this magnet school, the arts will get the money and personnel it needs. But this school will benefit the arts education of 540 students, and at the same time, it stands to reason that it will provide less access to academic curricula, particularly higher level courses for those students. However, I have not given up on the hope that this city can provide a comprehensive, well-rounded, fully funded education for all students. I am committed to that goal. I'm also committed to the idea that 6th graders and even 12th graders may not know what they want to do for the rest of their lives, and that it's our job as public educators to provide them with opportunities to take as many classes in as many fields as possible so they can figure it out. We should provide that opportunity for all students. And so I urge members of this board to fully consider all of the implications of creating an arts magnet school before moving ahead with this proposal. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Devanien.
Good evening. I live at 207 Goodwin Street, and I'm also the middle school band teacher for Green Hills and West Bristol K-8 schools. First, the fact that the arts magnet is even a subject of conversation is amazing, especially in such a sports institution town as Bristol. I'm a native here, and my father was in the JCs and everything else, so this is a great subject to be discussing. However, my colleagues and I have a lot of unease surrounding this project. One is that there's been no communication with any of the arts faculty, to my knowledge, concerning this project, and we are completely in the dark. Add to that the fact that over the last 7 years or so, we feel strongly that the arts department, and specifically the music department, has been systematically undermined between the scheduling at the middle school, forcing 10-year-olds to choose between art and music children cry. They cry. Every year I have parents come to me and ask why. Why can't they take both? And I say, I'm so sorry. It's just the way the schedule is, and I can't do anything about it to help your child. And our staff has been reduced to the barest minimum. We have split middle school staff between not just the K-8s, like I understand that, they're smaller they're smaller grade level schools. But Chippens Hill and Northeast now have to share a chorus teacher because when Roberta Vivilla retired, she was not replaced. And now Lori Eschner has retired, and we're combining the music and art department administrator, which is fine, except that that person would also be a district administrative substitute. How would that person fulfill the role of taking care of the arts when they also have to take care of all the other schools at a moment's notice? And in addition to that, how can we, like, what happens to the rest of the schools, the kids that are not in the arts magnet? What happens to the music and arts departments at every other school? How do we make, like, the band from the magnet school goes to the festival and yay, they're so great. But what about the band at Northeast, and what about the chorus at Green Hills? And how do we make sure that everyone has the same opportunities to explore what they love and to find something to be proud of and really feel like the city cares about them and will do the right thing for them? So,
Thank you. Next speaker is Catherine Morales.
Hi, I'm Catherine Morales. I live at 246 Westwoods Terrace, and I'm also, most of you know, the BFT Vice President of Elementary Schools. But I'm here split because I'm a mother here in Bristol, and my kids, even though they're only 2 and 4, they're always singing and dancing, and my son puts on movies with his superheroes in his bedroom, and so when I heard about an arts magnet school, I was super excited, like, oh my goodness, if this is built in time, perhaps my kids could enjoy that type of thing. And then the union part of me and the person that knows how school systems work and how teachers are distributed and how all of that works started to question that, as some of my colleagues have already said. The opportunities in Bristol for the other schools could be affected with this magnet school. I'm assuming that if you're spending all of these millions of dollars on magnet school, it's going to have state-of-the-art equipment and facilities and instruments and lighting and all of those things. And how do I explain to my son when he's in middle school, well, I'm sorry that you didn't win the lottery on this, so you're gonna go to Northeast and they have equipment that's 25 to 30 years old, and that's just the way it's gonna be. I don't know how I explain that to them. I don't know how I explain that to parents of students that I have or to friends of mine in the city. I also know from friends that I have that are not only teachers in Bristol but in other towns, that when high schools put on productions, they have to come up with that money on their own to buy the rights to the play, to pay the orchestra, whatever they're paying them. They have to raise the money, through fundraisers. With an art magnet school, I don't know if that would be part of their budget. And then the equity there between these teachers are getting all of these things as part of their budget, and these teachers are struggling to find 2 dimes to put a production together. And so those are just some questions I have. And then the other question, which I hope gets addressed later, I have not been able to attend all the meetings, so I may be a few months behind, but I know that it was discussed, it was going to be a lottery system for the school. And it was also mentioned that part of the reason that Bristol wanted to bring an arts magnet school to the city was to get some of those outplaced students back into Bristol. And I don't understand logistically how you can have a lottery, but then say we're going to be placing outplaced Bristol students into a magnet school to keep them here, because those two things don't seem like, so is the lottery fixed, or are we just saying half of it is a lottery and half of it's for people that are already in a magnet? So those are just some things, some thoughts that go through my crazy mind at 3 a.m. when I'm trying to fall asleep. So thank you for listening.
I would like to speak and not necessarily have any kind of commentary back and forth, but I welcome the opportunity to share the educational prospectus of this school, because I'm not sure you have the right idea about what has been planned. And so I will gladly share that with you.
Okay, our next speaker is Kelly McCabe.
Kelly McCabe. I live at 349 Ivy Drive as well. And some of my concerns have been addressed by some of my colleagues and perhaps Dr. Monroe. I think it would be informative to get some information. Maybe some of my concerns will be answered. But and I'm not someone who would be against spending more money and creating more opportunities for the school. But I guess from not just me, but I'm also a union steward. I'm a math teacher at Bristol Central High School. There is some unease about how this school is going to impact existing schools. There's no doubt that it could present some very good opportunities for students who get to go, but like we worry about what's going to happen to Bristol Central and Bristol Eastern, both from a teaching and student perspective. Even little things like what teachers will be teaching at the new magnet school. Will they how will they be chosen to go? If too many teachers want to go to this new opportunity, how will they be selected? Or, coming from a school where a lot of people really do enjoy working there, if teachers don't want to leave their current school and we can't staff a new magnet school, how will that be decided? Maybe there's a plan in place, but it doesn't seem like there's been much communication, because I can tell you that a lot of my colleagues, do have these concerns. And maybe the mindset is that some of this can be figured out along the way. I think my perspective is just that some of these things should be figured out before we decide this is definitely what we're doing. And again, not to say too much, because some of my colleagues have said this, but we do worry about students who maybe are interested in the arts but not passionate enough to go to a magnet school, making sure they still have opportunities at their high school. And the flip side of that is the people who are passionate about the arts, making sure that they have an academic curriculum that's going to serve their needs at the magnet school. But I do think, and again, maybe there's been more communication than I realized, but with the staff and administrators, we do worry about what's going to happen at our school. And we think that there are a lot of good things, even great things that we're doing there. And we don't want a situation where those things are negatively impacted in a way that, yes, maybe some students benefit, but we've thought about what's best for the entire district. And maybe those questions will be answered, but it seems like, just a curriculum perspective as well, if there's going to be presumably a different type of curriculum, we have a lot of questions about, who will be writing that, when will that happen? I think I've heard that there are some plans that maybe the school would open in 3 or 4 years, but if we don't know what plan is in place, not to have the curriculum done, but who's going to work on it, we just worry, even if it happens, is it going to be done well enough to meet the needs and be as good as it could be? And it just seems to decide we're definitely doing this until we know how it impacts staffing and curriculum and all of the other students. It is concerning to me and many of my colleagues. So those are just some of my thoughts, and perhaps some will be answered, but we don't want something that is going to negatively impact the town as a whole, but only benefit some. Thank you.
Thank you. Another bit of information. We just received our grant commitment letter yesterday, and so we didn't go into the next steps until we were sure that we had a commitment of the funding to renovate Memorial Boulevard School. But there will be information coming out now that we're absolutely sure.
Anybody else that didn't sign the list that would like to speak in public comment before we close public comment? All right, we're going to close public comment. We'll move on to deliberated items. Our first item on your agenda is 8.1, report on dress down days for 2017-18 school year. Superintendent, can you handle that?
Yes, for another wonderful year of monthly fundraisers. For those of you who don't know, our staff members can donate $5 to a charity, and they know which one it is each month, although we encourage a $50 check in September so that all of the months are covered. We raised $24,878 for local families in need as well as local charities. And I'm going to read them because I think it's important that everyone know what we're supporting. Morgan Amiot Fund was a student in need. Noah Brinkovinsky Fund, also a student in need. The Bristol Business Ed Foundation, the Bristol Board of Education Immediate Response Fund, which is a fund at the Main Street Community Foundation that provides up to $200 per incident for staff, students in need. They have funded things like prom dress for a student who wouldn't have otherwise had one, or part of a deposit on an apartment for a family to move, to give you the extremes of what those funds go to. For Goodness Sake, which is a local charity that provides furniture and housing goods for families that are starting over. In December, we always do a fund for all of the food pantries, and this year we had 4 food pantries that each received $600. The Henry Barnard Fund, which is for destitute teachers who retired mainly in the 1980s and 70s who are still with us. The Parent and Child Center for their caring closet. The United Way Day of Caring. And for June, we split the proceeds between the Mountain View Playscape Fund and the Bristol Canine Project, part of Operation Opioid. Very proud of our staff. That's a lot of money to raise. It's really good work.
On behalf of the board, we certainly thank our faculty who have contributed so much to this commitment to our community.
Excuse me, if I just ask a quick question, how are they chosen? You might have said this before, but
I get requests. Any child in need goes to the top of the list. So we will take others off of the list if there's that need. We have some that we always contribute to, which is Business Ed Foundation. It gives out mini grants to our teachers, so we raise money towards that. Our Board of Education Immediate Response Fund is always on the list, and then the others we cycle through. And I have to get a written request in order to put someone on the list.
Our next item is our feasibility study option. I asked our chair of the operations committee if she would frame this discussion a little bit before we put a motion on the table and have discussion. So, Commissioner Hintz.
Thanks, Chairman Wilson. About 2 years ago, the Board of Finance allocated $60,000 for us to perform a feasibility study. We spent $57,000 of that. And we do feasibility studies periodically to assess the condition of our buildings, the appropriateness of the buildings for the program of studies that's going on, and to look at demographic information. Our school populations, are they going up, are they going down? And how do we best utilize the funds we get from the Board of Finance and the City Council to maintain our schools? This year, while we were doing the feasibility study, the process of converting the Memorial Boulevard School into an arts magnet was going on concurrently. Many people in Bristol wanted to save that theater in Memorial Boulevard School. And getting state funding to turn that school into a magnet school was a wonderful across-the-board activity for the city of Bristol. It was bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats came together over it. City Council and Board of Education came together over it. The City Council under former Mayor Cockayne voted unanimously to ask the state for funding to convert Memorial Boulevard School into an arts magnet. The Board of Finance under Commissioner Chairwoman Cheryl Thibault unanimously voted to approve $14 million in soft costs and to approach the state for funding. The Board of Education unanimously voted to go forward to turn the Memorial Boulevard School into an arts magnet school and save that theater and create opportunities for our children. And I understand that teachers have a lot of questions about that. Dr. Moreau and her staff will be working diligently in the time that we have. And it's, I guess the hope for among some people is to have that school on board for its 100th anniversary. I don't know if that's going to be feasible or not. Once you start taking down walls and seeing what's behind them, things can take longer than you anticipate. But the feasibility study was done concurrently, but it wasn't a referendum on the Memorial Boulevard Art School. That was unanimously passed by everyone who had an opportunity to vote on it. The feasibility study had the architects who performed the study, Dromny Roseanne, presented us with a number of options. One of the options is titled the do nothing option, which is kind of a misnomer because we're never going to do nothing. If a school needs a roof, we're going to replace the roof. Southside School needs HVAC work, we're going to do that work. And we're trying very hard, I think, as a board, and Dr. Moreau as superintendent, to work more closely with City Hall, with the Board of Finance. Many of you may know there's a 10-year capital improvement plan, and everybody in the city vies for space on that plan. If the police officers need new radios, if one of our schools needs a new roof, if the fire department needs a new truck, everybody is vying for space on that list. So we want to be as mindful and careful and thoughtful when we make requests for funding to improve our buildings. So the do nothing option was passed in the Operations Committee, and that's the option we're going to put forward. What it really is to continue to attack the items that need improvement, the construction projects that need to happen, while the administration at the Board of Education does their work to plan for the preparation of the Memorial Boulevard Arts Magnet. We will use this time to look at population, to look at needs, to look at exactly how many kids are going to end up in that school, and be planful so that we can be ready. And if we have to take a school offline, we'll be making that determination at that time when we have more information. We don't want to do anything prematurely. We don't want to make any decisions without full knowledge of the decision we're making. So I'm going to make the motion today that, and we'll read it as written. I didn't even need my glasses. To approve option 1 as detailed by DRA Associates.
Do we have a second?
Second. Thank you.
We have a second. Okay, do we have any questions? Just so you know, once you've spoken, you don't get to speak again until everybody else has spoken. So.
I'm not a chatty Cathy up here, I promise. So my question, and forgive me for not knowing this, I should, but is there a time period attached to this do nothing approach? Is there, because my only concern honestly is that when we do put another school online, I don't want to appear to have ever been misleading, and I'm glad that you said that you brought that up. So I'm just asking, is there a time period that the do nothing is going to be a do nothing? Are you tracking?
No, I get exactly what you're saying, and I don't think we've put a deadline on it. I think this is something that's going to be top of mind. I think it's something we'll be considering on, regularly. When we brought the K-8s online, I wasn't on the board. You two were. And so you can speak to this better, but you had several years of planning and construction and site selection. I think it took about, 10 years? And it wasn't until shortly before the K-8s came online that the board made a redistricting plan. So I think Chris or Tom, if you want to speak to that, the timing on something like that.
No. Well, did you have any more comments, Jen?
Well, I just don't want to paint us into a corner where I feel like we're being disingenuous, that if there is going to be a point that we have to redistrict or close schools so that we can open the Arts Magnet School, I want to make sure that's abundantly clear and that we're not
I think it's abundantly clear if our population trends continue as they are or have been, that in all likelihood a school will be closed when the magnet school goes online. But again, I think it's premature at this point to make any decision on that.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak next?
I have a quick question. So in your presentation, which I do appreciate, I think that's good to frame this much better, but it sounded to me as if the current study might not necessarily be viable based on what I heard you say. So I hope I'm not mishearing this. I mean, we look at the current feasibility study. We have population, we have needs. Commissioner Wilson just also spoke about what the projection is in 5 years from now. So are we planning another feasibility study? Because we're going to do nothing until we need to make a decision, but what other information do we need to make a decision? I guess that's my question.
So in the past, we've seen projections that haven't panned out the way we thought they would on school population projections. I think when I first came on the board, we saw some projections that showed school population declining at a rapid rate. And in fact, it was a much more gradual slope. So I don't feel comfortable making a decision today based on projections that far out. I think, we need to look at exactly how many kids are going to end up at that magnet school. We need to look at, we have great information about the structural aspect of the buildings, and I think that'll guide us. And to Jen's point, we don't want to be disingenuous about what's going to happen.
but I would just feel much more confident, closer to, and seeing if projections were trending the way that they should, to see how much busing is going to cost before I made any kind of decision like that would impact so many students. But it's not, that's speaking for myself.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, I think I look at.
I have a few more comments.
Okay, I just wanted to respond to your first one, or does that eliminate my opportunity
You
to
can
speak?
do it when you get a chance to speak.
Oh, good. I'll look forward.
I appreciate it. So the other thing that I did just hear, which is something that I was also concerned about, is that, you know, when we do open that magnet school, we might have to make some decisions. I just want to be clear here that the 100th anniversary of the school, which is what we're hoping to achieve, is 2 years from right now. So I will throw that out. 3 years.
2021.
Yes. Well, pretty close. In 3 years, 2 years again, and I got picked on by minor details. Another one that I brought up at our operations meeting was we are effectively opening up a new high school. I'll say it safely that way. For me, another specialty school is great. As I had stated before, I'm all for the Arts Magnet School, and I think it's the best reuse of the building. However, I heard the concerns tonight of Mrs. McCabe, Kathy Morales, Kelly McCabe as well, and I am nervous that we are creating a specialty opportunity at the expense of other schools, and realistically, I think we have enough information to move forward to start to make some decisions. And by the way, Tom, you might like this, that I believe that realistically, we should be looking at creating one general high school, creating this Arts Magnet School, which is an opportunity for those that are interested in the arts. And then the other thing that nobody's talked about is a STEM school or technical education for our children. That's the one area in the state where jobs are plentiful, and you know, we've taken some of those opportunities away from our kids. I am concerned, and Ms. Devenir brought it up as well, that there's been a lack of communication on this, and hearing that we're going to take care of this, we're on it, we're doing this, and you know, with all due respect, Dr. Moreau, we just got our official letter. Well, it was approved. You know, if you think these things are going to happen, it's okay to make plans, because as you have said, we can change plans as we go. I'm very uncomfortable with pushing this off to another board and not making decisions when we have much of the information that we need. It's a disservice to our students, to our faculty that has come and spoken to us, and as I was in operations, but I'm not in favor of moving from a bad plan that we all agreed was a bad plan back in December. And it took us 6 months to decide that we should go back to do nothing. And just for the taxpayers out there, do nothing in the DRA proposal means that not only will we be spending $56 million of state funds, which is our taxpayer dollars, to build this school, we will also spend approximately, and again, I know it's an estimate, $58 million to just keep the schools that we have operational. Not to mention all of these operational costs that have been brought up by all of our citizens here, both at the operations meeting and at this meeting, with new equipment, potentially new staff. It's, I think, an abdication of our responsibilities to say that we're going to do nothing. And I don't care if that's what DRA called it. It seems unwise for a board. I'm done now. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. O'Brien.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Jeff. I think some of them are appropriate, but I think it's unfair to say that we should have already been into a planning mode. I think it takes a long time. I think we're very happy that we're going to get this kind of money from the state to renovate the boulevard for many reasons. I don't agree that do nothing, it means that we're going to spend $58 million on the other schools. Many of the recommendations in the DRA report looked at different alternatives in going forward, and were somewhat unrealistic in proposals for modifications or adding new schools. I don't think that's realistically going to happen. We received funding for 2 new schools within the last 10 years. We now are getting funding to renovate the boulevard, and it's unlikely that we'll be getting funding for any additional schools. As you know, during the operations committee, I did push to look at the concept of a single high school, and I still think that's something that may have to be considered, but what we need first is information, and information will be initially what it's going to cost to staff and operate the boulevard once it's completed. Once we have that number, everything else will have to fall into place, including the likelihood that at least one school will be closed in order to be realistic in terms of the amount of the education budget. So I don't think this is a bad thing by any means. Do nothing doesn't mean do nothing. It just gives us a guide for prioritizing projects, such as the Southside HVAC project that we pulled out of the study rather than wait for funding for a new Southside school, which we know is not going to happen. And so I think we just are being realistic. We're moving forward. We're going to meet the needs of the existing facilities. And once we have information with regard to staffing the magnet school, we can address some of the concerns that were raised tonight. I have those concerns. You have those concerns. I think we all have those concerns. And we're just at a point now where we can start to address them by having information. To make decisions without information makes no sense.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I just have something brief. Being new to the board, I was not on the board when the vote was made for the Arts Magnet School. And I know that Commissioner Hintz had mentioned that at that time, there was a universal support for that. I do share a lot of the same concerns that we're hearing tonight from staff. I have those concerns both as a board member and a parent. Prior to my participation on the Board of Ed, I've come to these meetings myself to advocate for music programs in all the schools, especially when the changes were happening at the middle schools. And I do have some concern about the timing and being able to get a lot of the information out to the public so that they feel more comfortable with what's going forward. And I just want to say, quite honestly, had I been on the board when the decision was made for the Arts Magnet School, I right now highly doubt I would have voted for it.
Anybody else wish to speak that hasn't spoken? Anybody wish to speak who has spoken?
If you don't mind, Tom, I think I agree with most of your comments.
Please make the comments through the chair.
One comment I would like to speak about is the fact that we were potentially in a position now to prioritize projects by choosing a do-nothing plan. I think that's what I heard. It says, this helps us to decide which schools we should spend money on. And that is exactly my point, why I'm so against this, is that doing nothing and putting money into HVAC at Southside, which, by the way, I think we should do. What if we decide to close Southside 3 years, I'm going to be with you guys now, 3 years from now. We've just spent $3 million on that project. Not having a plan at this critical juncture is a mistake, in my opinion.
Well, I wouldn't vote to spend money at Southside if I thought there was a possibility it would be closed. So in my opinion, I would not support that, which is why I felt it was important that we take care of the problem there. I think there are other schools that were listed in the report that are more likely to be affected. We don't know which ones those are yet, and I don't think we need to make that decision today. But you're right, the feasibility study at least pointed out what the problems were at each school and helped us determine which problems should be addressed as soon as possible. But I think we're not...
I prefer not to go back and forth on this.
Yeah, I just would like to...
if we have new information to come forward...
I would like to say one other thing, and I think this board has shown its commitment to the arts and music programs, and the success they've had is reflected by our support and by the hard work of the teachers and staff at the different schools. But I mean, each year we have had art and music programs that have been recognized throughout the state and in some cases nationally, and I think that's a reflection of our commitment to those programs, and we're going to continue to do that.
The DRA study, just to be clear, has identified those schools of need And every single one of those schools happens to be a school that services grammar school children, or K-8, lower grades. We are adding a school that will service children from 6 through 12. Again, I call it another new high school. We do have a major problem that we have to look at, and that's all I'll say.
I think you're ready to vote.
Can I ask one final question? I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to get chatty Cathy. I lied. One point of clarification. So there will not be another feasibility study before we proceed with this, is what we're saying. Guess if you must, but I just would like to know.
We typically do a feasibility study about once every 8 to 10 years. So is what's been our past practice. So every 8 to 10 years we do a feasibility study. So I think this feasibility study will inform us as to what decisions have to be made in the future, if any. So I think we'll do a roll call vote. Start with my left. Or no, Susan does it. Sorry.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Fudgehammer?
No.
Commissioner Dubey? Commissioner D'Antonio?
No.
Chairman Wilson?
So I get to break the tie. Yes.
4-3. Vote passed.
All right, we move on to, I lost my place in all that discussion. Okay, we're now on to 9-1, our policy revision. I'd just like to state that before we go through all these, the policy committee and student achievement in this case, they spent a lot of the last couple of months working on all these policies. We will probably go through them in a pretty quick fashion. I just want everybody to know that we have done complete due diligence in all these revisions and amendments and removals. I'll turn it over now to Commissioner Taylor. Oh, Commissioner,
okay.
that's it. Superintendent
It's okay.
Morrow. Okay.
The first policy is policy 3231, medical reimbursement for special education students. This is an affirmation, which means we agree with the policy that we currently have. And I would recommend approval.
Move to affirm the policy 3231.
Second.
It's probably properly made and seconded. Any comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Policy 3510, buildings and grounds management. This is a very minor revision with titles of people, but as you know, we're looking to revise the entire policy manual, so we're looking at everything. And if we see Director of Buildings and Grounds versus Director of Facility, we make those changes. I would recommend approval.
Move to approve the revisions to policy 3510.
Wait a second. Jen got it first.
Okay.
So it's been properly made and seconded. All in favor, or any questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Policy 3516.3, accident prevention and reporting. We've taken out some language. We've changed the title to Director of Facilities and Director of Safety and Security, and listed the protocol that we actually used in terms of employees who are injured at work. I recommend approval.
Move to approve the revisions to 3516.3.
I'll second.
Motion's been properly made and seconded. Any comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Jen. Policy 5131.6, alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. The revision to this policy has to do with the addition of vaping to our policy, which is in our discipline guidelines dealt with in the same manner as tobacco possession or use in school. And I recommend approval.
Move to approve the revisions to policy 5131.6.
Second.
We've had the motion properly made and seconded. If there's no comments or questions, I think you're all ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Policy 5141.231, prohibition on recommendation of psychotropic drugs. This is a minor revision as well. This policy says that staff members cannot ask a parent to take their child to the pediatrician and put them on any kind of medication. Instead, they may make a recommendation to have them go to the pediatrician and discuss whatever issues they think they have with their child. I would recommend approval.
Move to revise policy 5141.231.
Second.
I think Commissioner Hintz got you that time. So the motion's been properly made and seconded. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next, we have a revision to policy 5131.911, bullying. And this policy revision has some changes to timelines. And I don't know, this was presented by, and I'm confused as to whether Dr. D or Dr. Carmone presented this to the committee. Rock, paper, scissors?
Good evening. We did review the revisions. I think we're going back about a month ago, and then most recently Monday evening. So some of the revisions do include tightening up timelines, as well as changing language around notification of parent or guardian. And the proposed policy also includes the subsequent forms that would need to be completed by staff, documenting both the report and the subsequent investigation and the outcome.
We also added all of the protected classes that we're aware of at this time. And I would recommend approval.
Move to approve the revisions to policy and regulation 5131.911.
Second.
That's been properly made, and motion has been properly made and seconded. I think we have
Just a point of clarification here, I want to make sure, because I was at that meeting, that I don't see it in here where the timeline, and I could be missing it, just on our copy here, it could just be the copy.
What happened was, because there were so many issues with the formatting on it, I had it totally retyped, so you're not seeing the crossouts and bold anymore.
Okay, and I may see somewhere where it got added now too, but it's a long policy. So I just want to make sure that's in there for the record, that like I say, huge area of contention, so I want to make sure it's correct.
Any other comment? If not, I think you're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Policy 6111, school calendar. This revision is another title change. Instead of my presenting the calendar to you, Dr. Galloway, Human Resources Director, presents that calendar, and it's every other year as opposed to every year, and it includes parent conference dates as well. So I would recommend approval.
Move to approve the revisions to policy 6111.
Second.
Motion been seconded by Jen Doobie. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Policy 6200, instruction, adult and continuing education. This revision, it's been a while in waiting, says that a student cannot go to adult education until age 17 instead of age 16, which used to be the age of consent to leave school. I recommend approval.
Move to accept the revisions to policy 6200.
Second.
Approved. The motion made by Commissioner Taylor, approved by, seconded by Jen Doobie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next is policy and regulation 5131.914, school climate. This is a new and revised policy. Dr. Carbone?
The policy outlines guidance on creating a district-wide and safe school climate plan, and outlines and defines the roles and responsibilities of the members of our Board of Education, central office, as well as school responsibilities to create a safe and positive school climate. Explains that a safe school climate plan has to be maintained and communicated, and identifies the attributes of what a safe school climate plan would entail as far as programming within schools. and it is new policy.
Move to approve policy and regulation inclusion 5131.914.
Second.
And this motion has been properly made and seconded. Any questions or comments?
I just have one quick comment. I want to thank Dr. Carbone and the rest of the administration that showed up at the Joint Policy and Student Achievement Committee meeting. It was extremely beneficial for me to have those resources there, and they entertained and spent a lot of time answering a lot of questions that we had to enrich our knowledge about such a policy, and I just want to formally thank them for doing so.
I will make that a third then, and add just one other kind of a request, I guess, too. This is a very complex, difficult policy, and dealing with school climate is difficult. I think that I will ask that we make sure we continue to have great education, communication. And one of the thoughts I had after the meeting is that the tenets from each school maybe be published, if possible, on the Bristol Board of Ed website, the school's websites. I think that would be very helpful. As a parent who no longer has kids in school, we spent an hour and a half, 2 hours talking about this. It's a lot of information. I love the passion that Dr. Carbone has, and I'm sure this is going to work, but it is a very difficult and complex, so I want to keep that communication open to families and schools.
Do you mean things like Stay Sharp at Green Hills, laws at West Bristol?
Yeah, kind of their tenets or their laws. I think that's helpful, and that will help guide and coach parents and teachers on the basic tenet of the program, and then all the other newer stuff, and quite honestly, a lot of new stuff here may be easier to work through, because there will be some work to be done.
Mr. Wren, did you have something you want to say?
Yes, as the other members of the board, I enjoyed the conversation and discussion last night, but I do want to emphasize that accountability has to be part of this school climate program, and that students who knowingly, and I emphasize knowingly, particularly after the discussion we had last night, don't meet the expectations of the school community, they have to understand there will be consequences. And I think that was brought out last night, but I just want to emphasize it.
Any other comment? If not, I think you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Policy 3512, building repairs. I'm recommending we remove this from the policy manual. It requires the director of facility or the supervisor of buildings and grounds from notifying the Buildings and Grounds Committee, which is now called the Operations Committee, of building repairs that need to occur. We're too big a system to hold a meeting to tell operations when a building repair needs to be done. We do present the 10-year capital plan to the Operations Committee, and those are the major repairs, as well as this year we did present the issue with the roof at Edgewood and 2 water main breaks. So I recommend approval.
Move to approve the removal of policy 3512.
Second.
Properly made and seconded. Any comments or questions? If not,
I don't believe we actually had a motion on the last item, 5131.914, right into discussion. Did we have it? Who
On school
seconded it?
climate?
I thought we did, same two.
Same two thing.
We have a program here.
They've lulled you to sleep.
Sorry.
okay, so we're on the next one, buildings
Yes.
and grounds removal, just so it is clear.
That we're good.
And the motion has been properly made and seconded. And is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is policy 6141.5, 7-semester graduation. I thought we removed it about 8 years ago, but it's still hanging on. Any student who meets our graduation requirements should be able to graduate whenever they meet those requirements. They used to come before the board, for those of you who don't know what the process was, and ask the board if they could graduate early, even if they had met requirements.
Move to approve the removal of policy 6141.5.
Second.
And we have a motion, and it's been properly seconded. Is there any questions on this motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now move down to new business, and if we have any new business, we have information. I'll start on my far left, your right, that with Commissioner D'Antonio.
I do not have any new business.
Not new business, this is information.
Information.
Do you have any information?
I do not have any information.
Okay.
I have lots of information, but none to share.
Okay. Commissioner Caggiano.
I think this is the most appropriate place to do this, but we all received information over the 4th of July holiday that we are looking towards efficiencies within the Board of Education in the city, which I'm all for. I actually was not officially part of the task force, but attended all the task force meetings with the previous mayor on this. And I would love to get an update at some point, maybe at one of our next meetings, Commissioner Wilson, perhaps through you. There were a lot of concerns at that meeting. We did not move forward with things like combining the IT department, payroll, other things. FERPA was an issue. So I would love an update on the board on what that means from a financial perspective. So that may come from Jill, but just a general update would be good. And then I guess it's another point of information that Green Hills, I believe, has completed. I actually did get a question I will share with you from the Board of Finance. The Green Hills project, there's still some ongoing lawyer fees, I understand. Is that project near completion, complete? I don't know that we've had an update on it. There may be an operations
That
center.
might not really be a Board of Ed question, because believe it or not, but building projects are not Board of Ed projects. So the city would be the appropriate place to ask that question. It would be controlled by their attorneys, and I believe that question has been asked and answered by the Board of Finance, the Board of Finance member.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No other information.
Okay.
I do not. Nothing to share.
Just like to point out, I'm thankful Commissioner Bibbert's not here adding a half hour to the meeting tonight.
Councilman Kelly, do you have any information you wish to share? I'll start on that side for liaison reports as well. We can just come back around. Mr. Bryan?
No report.
No report.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I have none.
So,
I do have one thing. And CABE has a leadership conference on 8/13 at Water's Edge in the afternoon at Westbrook from 1:30 to 6:30. And it's a panel discussion on the lessons learned from Massachusetts, which I thought would be pretty informative for you, for those of you that want to see what Massachusetts has done over the last 10 or 15 years to move education forward. And if there's anything that Connecticut can learn from that. Jackie Raby Thomas is one of the panelists on that, as well as a commissioner from the state of Massachusetts. So I thought that might be of interest to you. And
Commissioner Wilson, what date was that again?
it's 8/13 at Water's Edge.
From 1 to 6.
1:30 to 6:30,
1:30 to
whatever.
6.
Yep. And it's also going to be, I'm sure it'll be a scintillating conversation, another panel discussion between CCM, the Conference of Municipalities, and CABE, two staff people, two board of directors members from each organization will have a panel discussion. So those are the only two items that I had, or one item actually. And so having no other business to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned.